Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 9 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today I'll be covering the AD carry Caitlyn, the Sheriff of Piltover. In this video, I'm going to be covering things like her pros and cons, her runes, her abilities, skill order, and other things of the sort. If you enjoy the video, please also like and subscribe, and I do also have a Discord server as well, so if you need any more help League of Legends related, please make sure you hop in there as well, and you can ask anything you'd like. But with that out of the way, let's look at her strengths and weaknesses. So first of all, she is one of the longest range AD carries there is in the game, so that in itself is an advantage. You will be able to poke a lot of melee champions and those lower range AD carries as well from a safe distance and take very little damage back in return. You do also have some okay mobility from your 90 caliber net. Of course it's not as good as an Ezreal's Arcane Shift, but at least you have something to jump backwards if you need to. You are a champion that also has some great scaling, so you don't have to worry about going into the later stages of the game too much, and you do also bring crowd control so you can actually chain CC people with your support champion if they have some. You of course however are a very squishy champion because you are an AD carry and therefore very vulnerable to assassins. You will have to make sure you position properly in team fights because if people get on top of you, you'll die very quickly. You are a champion that is able to hyper carry in the later stages of the game, however, you of course are item dependent, so you need to get these items as quickly as possible to start dishing out that damage. Now let's move on to your rune page. You want to go for precision and inspiration, grabbing fleet footwork as your keystone. You do also have the option for going lethal tempo as well if you want to output a little bit more damage, but usually the sustain and the movement speed you get from fleet footwork is going to help you a lot more throughout the lane phase and team fights. I then like to go for the combination of Overheal and Legend Bloodline just to give yourself some nice sustain. For your item build on Caitlyn, usually you pick up an Infinity Edge and 2 attack speed / crit items, so you're not going to have any lifesteal, and this helps you with that issue. You still could go for Triumph and Alacrity if you wanted the attack speed instead, but usually you'll get a lot more out of the lifesteal. I then finish up Precision by getting Coup de Grace so I deal more damage to low health enemies. Now as for that inspiration side, I like to go for Magical Footwear and Biscuit Delivery. Magical Footwear is pretty nice because you will get free boots which will allow you to rush your Infinity Edge just a little bit quicker. Then to help with any early lane sustain, you got Biscuit Delivery there because you will get a free biscuit every 3 minutes until 12 minutes, which helps with your sustain. You do also have the option of going for Sorcery as well and taking Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. This will help you scale into the later stages a little bit better, but your laning phase will be a little bit worse. As for those secondary runes, you want to go for Offense's 10% attack speed, Flex's 9 adaptive force, and then you want to choose between Defense Armor and Defense Magic Resist. Basically, just take whichever one you think will help you most in the lane that you're against. Now, as for your summoner spells, you want to stay very generic and just take Flash and Heal. Caitlyn, like I said previously, is a very squishy AD carry that is very position reliant, and Flash can help you with this throughout the game. If an enemy champion does get on top of you, you can simply flash away and start kiting them while dealing all of your damage while they're kind of just chasing you around. Heal is then generally the best secondary option in the bottom lane because you can use it to save both yourself and your teammates. It will of course give you a little bit of extra survivability, and you can even pop it for the movement speed as well if you do need it for kiting or chasing. Now let's move on to your abilities, and let's start with the passive, Headshot. Whenever you basic attack on Caitlyn, you will gain a stack of Headshot. At 6 stacks, you will headshot, dealing bonus damage, which scales off of your attack damage and your critical strike chance. Whenever you land your Yordle Snap Trap or your 90 caliber net on an enemy, they will also be headshot on your next auto attack. So this here is a pretty nice passive. You want to focus on last hitting during the early lane phase, and whenever you get your headshot available, try to poke the enemy with it. If you're not too comfortable last hitting yet, you can always use this bonus damage on minions as well, just to secure the cannon minions to make sure you get that gold. Other than that though, there's not too much to the passive. You just want to try to hit the enemy with it whenever you can, and of course make sure you auto attack any trapped or slowed enemies with your 90 caliber net. Next up is your Q ability, Piltover Peacemaker. When activated, Caitlyn will fire a projectile in the target direction that deals damage to enemies it passes through. It'll do a lot of damage to the first target hit, however it will only deal 60% damage to secondary targets. If used on an enemy that is stuck in your Yordle Snap Trap, it will always deal 100% of the damage, however, even if you hit a bunch of minions before it. This is definitely one of Caitlyn's strongest abilities, and it's the one you want to get points into early on in the lane phase. It's really good at poking the enemy champions, and if you do need to last hit multiple minions at the same time, it's great in those situations as well because of the AoE damage. It can be somewhat tricky to land on an enemy champion, however, so try to combo it with your net or your trap. Next up would be that trap ability, Yordle Snap Trap. When activated, Caitlyn will arm a trap after 1.1 seconds that stays for a duration between 30 and 50 seconds. Enemies who step inside will be rooted for 1.5 seconds and revealed for 3 seconds. So this here's a really nice ability as well because you will get some nice lane control from your kit as well. You can toss these just around the lane, or you can use it in the side brushes or even the river brush as well to watch for ganks or people sitting in the bush trying to poke you. It'll ensure people aren't in those locations so you can sit in the lane and safely farm and acquire your items. If the support champion you're with does have crowd control, this can also be used offensively. Caitlyn's going to work great with things like Morgana because if she can land her bind ability, you can go up and trap them and chain crowd control people for a long duration and basically just get free kills. Therefore, if you are with a champion that does have a form of crowd control, make sure you always hold on to a Yordle snap trap because you can chain CC together and get kills. Next here we have your E ability, 90 caliber net. When activated, Caitlyn fires a net and flies backwards 400 units. She'll deal magic damage to the first enemy hit, slow them for 1 second, and gives you your headshot. So the first reason this ability is really strong is because it can be used as an escape. Not only will you create a 400 unit zone between yourself and that enemy, if you hit them you'll also slow them and make kiting a lot easier for you. It can also be used offensively as well because it will give you your headshot, and if you follow it with a Q afterwards you can do a lot of burst damage and a really quick combo. It's not going to do a lot of damage by itself because it does have an AP ratio, but the headshot and an easily landed Q can make it a very strong ability. And that finally brings us to her ultimate, Ace in the Hole. When activated, Caitlyn locks onto the target enemy and channels for 1 second. Once finished, she'll shoot a projectile and deal damage to the first target hit. So this is a pretty strong ability because it does have a 200 bonus AD ratio and can do a lot of damage from a really long distance. This makes it a really strong executing ability, however people can go in between the line that this creates and block the shot and not have a target killed. In some situations, this ability can be very strong because it is a very long range execute, but in other situations, it'll just be blocked by a tank and they'll take no damage. Either way though, throughout the game, you want to try to use this ability to finish off low health enemies and get yourself snowballing. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then you want to focus on getting some early points into your Q ability, but usually I'll stop at just 3 points and then start maxing my W afterwards. I like to get 3 early points in my Q just to help with the poke damage and last hitting minions, and then move on to the W for some extra lane control. This will increase the maximum number of traps you can have up to 5, and they will last for a longer duration, so this gives you a lot of control, and that's why I move on after 3 Qs. Either way though, once your Q and W abilities are maxed, you want to move on to your E ability afterwards because it does have an AP ratio and won't do a lot of damage for you. You will still want to take an early point in this ability at level 3 because it is still a solid escape and it's a great way to proc headshots and do a lot of burst damage. Now we're going to look at a couple of your combos, and first up is your EQ auto attack. To start this combo, all you want to do is land your 90 caliber net on the target and then instantly follow up with a Q and an auto attack. This here is going to be a really strong combo for you because you will create a gap from the enemy, slow them, and also land a lot of damage from your Q and a headshot. For your other combo, we have one you'd use against a target that was crowd controlled if you want to chain CC. So once that target is crowd controlled, drop your W's trap on top of them, and once trapped, use your Q and an auto attack. This will get a lot of burst damage off on the target because you will land your Q rather easily and get off an empowered auto attack with your headshot. Other than these combos, you'll pretty much just be auto attacking, and when you see a low target, try to execute them with your ultimate. Caitlyn's not really one of those champions that has a ton of different combos. Now we're going to look at a couple champion synergies, and first up is those chain CC ones like Morgana and Zilean. If Morgana can land her binding ability or something like Zilean can land his bomb combos, Caitlyn can drop her trap on top of them, chain CC them, and get off a lot of damage, and usually get some really easy kills. They also bring some nice defensives as well, so kiting is a lot easier for Caitlyn, and she's relatively safe. Now because of her really long range poke damage, she also works great with pokey support champions as well, like Brand and Vel'Koz. Basically here with these champions, you want to abuse your long range and poke enemy champions out of lane, or just try to straight up kill them. Then last here, we have the more traditional defensive healing / shielding support champions like Sona and Janna. These champions will help peel for Caitlyn and give her some really nice sustain throughout the lane phase so she can make it to the late game and hyper carry. Now as for Caitlyn's counters, some AD carries like Sivir and Jinx can give her a tough time. Both of these AD carries can wave clear relatively easy, and they are better team fighters than her, so they just kinda gotta clear the waves and then get to the team fight stage. Of course, since Caitlyn is a very squishy champion, she will struggle against a lot of assassins. This will of course be champions like Talon, Zed, or Fizz. Against them, you'll have to play very safe, try to keep a gap on them, and don't let them all in you. Then finally, champions at armor stack are of course not going to take too much damage against Caitlyn because she is full AD. If you are against a very tanky team rushing a lot of armor, you will have to get an LDR or a Mortal Reminder rather early so you can actually get through some of that armor and deal some damage. During the lane phase, the first thing you need to focus on is of course lats hitting minions and getting your farm. AD carries are generally very item dependent in order to do their damage, so you need to get as much farm as possible and get those items rolling in so you can be effective in the mid and late game. You'll then want to make sure you use your wards and your traps effectively to try to keep some lane control and keep eyes on the enemy champions so you don't get ganked repeatedly and just feed the enemy. In between these last hits, since Caitlyn is a long range AD carry, you want to try to poke the enemy champions as well. Keep in mind that you can always use your Piltover Peacemaker to last hit minions and poke the enemy champions at the same time. As I previously mentioned, make sure you always hold on to one of your traps because it's a great way to peel for yourself if somebody's jumping on top of you, or you can chain crowd control with your support. Now as for your team fights, your first thing you need to do of course is obviously try and stay at range. This means constantly kiting enemies and trying to keep a gap between you and them so they can't jump on top of you and do a bunch of damage. You are a very squishy champion and there is a lot in League of Legends that can easily 100-0 you in a full combo. This means you may have to fight the tankier champions on the front line first, but if you have a bunch of items and you farmed effectively, you can still shred them. You will of course want to drop your Yordle snap traps around the team fight as well for some nice zoning, and if you do see a low health enemy, try to snipe them with your ultimate. Alright, now let's finish off this guide with Caitlyn's Itemization. So as for your first buys, you'll want to try to get your Infinity Edge and your Berserker Greaves. This will give you some really nice attack damage, making last hitting and poking the enemy champion a lot more effective, but you'll also get 25% critical strike chance, and those critical strikes will deal increased damage. Then of course you have the Berserker Greaves just so you can move around better and kite, and of course you have the attack speed to make you output more damage and last hit a little bit easier as well. Then you'll move on to your core section. You want to get a rapid fire cannon and a static ship. With both of these items, your critical strike chance will shoot up to 75% and you'll have a lot of attack speed and some nice extra damage on hit when you gain the static shiv and the rapid fire cannon. Now once you acquire your first buys and your core items, you have your item pool, which is a bunch of different items you can buy to finish off your items. So first we have the lifesteal options and the Bloodthirster and the Mercurial Scimitar. The Bloodthirster is generally better if you can just output damage and you don't have a lot of crowd controls on the enemy team, but if you're getting hit by a lot of CCs like say a Malzahar ultimate, you will have to go for Mercurial Scimitar so you can break it. Then you have your armor penetration items in the LDR and the Mortal Reminder. LDR is generally better because you will output more damage, but if the enemy has a bunch of healing, you will have to go for Mortal Reminder to help shut it down so they don't have that ridiculous healing. Then, as a final item, of course you have the Guardian Angel as well, which is a really solid defensive that adds even more damage at the same time. This gives you a shield, and when you die when it is available, you will come back to life, which can make it really strong in the later stages of the game when you have really long death timers. I generally like to go really greedy in that item pool and go for the Bloodthirster and an LDR for straight up damage output, but the Guardian Angel is a fantastic item, and it's one you probably want to buy at some point during the game because of the shield that it provides. But that, ladies and gentlemen, covers everything I've got for the Caitlyn AD Carry Guide in Season 9. I'm also going to be linking my How to Attack Move guide at the end here because it will help a lot of AD carry players out there with kiting if they do need it. But other than that, I'd just like to thank you guys for checking out the video. I really do appreciate it, and sorry it's been so long since I've made one, but thank you guys again, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, have a good day, and peace.